This week on Dance of Joy, we talk about airline slogans, summers in Beirut, and the specifics of flood control. All that and more as we watch Season 5, Episode 8 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Sophia. I'm one of your hosts, and joining me every week, as always, is your co-host and my brother. What's up, Imran?
What's up, sister? How's it going? I'm stressing out a little bit over here. This episode got me so stressed out, I had to call the company that installed our flood control system in the house just for some maintenance, just to make sure it's still working.
Just to put your mind at ease.
Is the sump pump plugged in? Is the backup there? Are the drains clear? Oh, my God. Because when you
had a little flood anxiety, did you?
Yes, total flooding. Because when you buy a house, and I'm not kidding, they tell you, this one guy gave me the best advice. He's like, your number one enemy when you buy a house is water in all parts.
No.
It's water maintenance. Keep the water where it's supposed to be. Keep it away from where it's not supposed to be. Water is the worst thing. So, yeah.
Well, brother, that's why I will rent forever.
Yes, if you rent, then you don't got to worry about flood control systems.
But the cousins are renting, and they had some flood trouble, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Because we are, of course, at Season 5, Episode 8, Fathers Knows Best, Part 2.
Question mark?
The conclusion of the saga we started last week.
Yeah, and last week we mentioned the title is based on a classic radio TV show, Father Knows Best.
That's right.
But if you would open up the TV guide, this is what you would have read. Like you said, it says conclusion. Larry feels like a washout who blew the chance to impress his visiting father, and he also feels responsible for the predicament the gang is in trying to stay alive in the flooded basement. And there is a common thread in all the Perfect Strangers two-parters. Larry's got them into a pickle and almost gets everyone killed. Yes, every two-parter is about Larry almost getting everyone killed. Boy.
Well, in the past, it's been other people who have come to his rescue. We'll see how they get out of it this week.
Ah, that's a good tease.
This episode, like always, stars our two main favorites, Bronson Pinchot and Marklyn Baker as Balky and Larry. We also have their girlfriends, Marianne and Jennifer, played by Rebecca Arthur and Melanie Wilson. And we have, remember this, party guests, Lydia and Mr. Gorpley, played by Belina Marino and Sam Anderson. And then, of course, we had Papa Appleton, Larry's father, Mr. Walter Appleton, played by James Noble. And this episode aired on November 17th, 1989.
Of course, if you want to binge Perfect Strangers, it is available for free to stream on Amazon Freevee. I just need a little account. There's one little commercial break in the middle. All 8 seasons are there. It's great. I have it bookmarked. It's my favorite place to go on Amazon Freevee.
One of this part 2, Father Knows Best, we get what we used to get in the 80s and 90s all the time. We don't see so much anymore. The episode starts with a voiceover saying, last week on Perfect Strangers.
Yeah, because it's a two-parter. We got to remind the audience, it's been a week. What happened?
It's been a whole week. That's like unheard of
They
today.
still do that, though. Like on this House of Dragon, Game of Thrones show, there's previously on some of the streaming shows.
Every episode or between seasons?
No, every episode. It depends.
Yeah, sure.
Like the weekly release shows still do it, but then when they drop a whole season,
I feel
they don't.
Like She-Hulk is doing it too.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, and and it's always the thing where they show you important things from the last episode that are going to.
But they don't do that voiceover. They don't do that 80s familiar last week on Perfect Strangers. Previously. Yeah.
So they show us everything
with like the 80s suspense music too.
Do we need to recap? Basically, they're stuck in the basement. It's flooding. The door's locked. It's all.
That's right.
It's kind of Larry's fault.
Larry's father's visiting. He's criticizing him about everything. Larry's trying to prove a point. They go down to the basement to get a bet. His father criticizes his baseball stance. He pitches him a ball. Larry takes a swing, hits a pipe. Water starts flooding out. His father tries to fix it, makes it worse. More water starts flooding out of the pipe. And they realize that when the water hits the electrical box, they'll all be electrocuted. And at the end, by that time, we have all 6 characters and Larry's father, 7 characters.
Yeah, there's 7 people in the basement in the whole episode.
And they're locked in.
And you know what? It gives us, this is a thing you see a lot in action movies, a gimmick called the ticking clock.
Yes.
Right? So we have a ticking clock. Water is rising. You don't want to get electrocuted. What's going to happen?
Like the Dynamite episode recently.
Oh, yeah. That had a quick ticking clock at the end when he activated the timer.
So one thing to note is when we last saw them at the end of last week's episode, the water was like, I don't know, shin height.
Yeah. We
just
say
above their ankles
height.
kind of thing. Yeah, under their knees for sure. And now suddenly we're kind of starting right where we left off, but mysteriously the water is pretty high. It's like at their chest now.
It's a lot higher, maybe.
And it's a lot closer to the bottom of that
yes.
Electrical box. So yeah, there's a timing issue and a bit of things that we have to overlook.
It's just called 80s sitcom water physics.
Yeah, it's been flooding for a whole week.
Yes, it should be a lot higher if you think about it.
Okay, so we're back in the basement. There's water coming out of this pipe. The water's like chest height now on the floor. There's 7 people now standing at the top of the wooden staircase, like banging on the front door, screaming, help, help. And of course, nobody can hear them through that door. We've already established that. And there's a nice little reversal here. Last episode, Larry was like maniacally screaming for longer help into Balky's ear. And this time it's flipped. Balky's screaming into Larry's ear.
So they're both also have hearing damage at the end of this. They've been yelling at each other's ears.
And they're like losing their voice. Balky's like voice is scratchy.
Hoarse. Yeah.
He's like, we're going to damage our vocal cords. And then Larry's father's like, nobody's going to hear us anyway. So what's the point? And then Lydia starts to panic, right? Because she's like, we got to do something. I don't want to be electrocuted. I don't want to die. Not in this ensemble.
Well, she came dressed for a party. Let's not forget we assumed they were throwing a party for...
Yeah, but if it's good enough for a party, it's good enough to die in.
Yeah, that'd be you dressed up nice. Don't you want nice clothes? Go out in your nice clothes.
Yeah.
Everybody is freaking out, and Larry's like, okay, hold on. We think of something, we can get away out of this, and then everybody stops and thinks. And it's really funny.
Like physically.
They physically stop and they do the whole, they put their hand on their chin, and everybody is thinking. And of course, this Gorpley is such not helpful because he goes, and they all look at him, and then he goes, I got nothing. Stupid Gorpley, getting everybody excited. But then Larry says he has an idea. And he goes downstairs into the water and into the storage closet.
And he's like beady-eyed, head forward, like leading with his forehead.
Yes, I have
determined, frantic face Larry. And Balky's like, oh, he's got that look in his eyes. And he says, normally that scares me, but when you're thigh deep in water, you lower your expectations.
Well, they're thigh deep now. But
thigh deep on the stairs, I think.
Oh, yeah, it'll be higher.
It's pretty high.
Yes, it gets a lot higher. So what is this idea?
Oh, no, they are. It is thigh deep.
Right now it's thigh deep, but it does. You'll see it get higher and higher at certain stages. So Larry comes back out of the storage closet and he's carrying a mannequin's head. First of all, why does he have? How does he know? Why is there a mannequin's head back there? Is it from?
Presumably he only has access to their own storage that he opened.
Could it possibly be from Twinkassetti's store where there would be mannequins?
Oh yeah.
Yes. So I just thought of that. I was like, wait a minute. Why does he have a mannequin's head? So
there's so many questions actually in this episode.
He has his head. He goes, this ought to do it. And Balky goes, now, Carson, this is no time to try your ventriloquist act. As he walks over to the pipe, and Balky's just like, I've seen it, and his lips move constantly. So apparently he's a very, very bad ventriloquist, Larry Appleton.
But Larry, of course, is not doing ventriloquism. He is focused on this pipe. So what he does, he takes the head over to the open pipe where it's burst open, and he shoves the neck part of the head into the big hole in the pipe. And so the head part is sticking out and the neck part is in the pipe and the water stops. And everybody's like, yay, yes, you did it. And even Gorpley says, Appleton finally came up with something that worked. I don't believe it.
And Balky chimes in with a nice pun where he says, well, cousin, I must say this time you really used your head. kind of laughs at his
Good
own
one,
joke
Balky.
there.
Good one.
And Jennifer pays Larry a compliment. She says,
yeah, everybody's gushing over Larry right now.
She goes, that was a really good idea, Larry.
And Larry feels
yeah.
so good about himself.
Yes. He's like, well, I spotted the problem and I just fixed it. But while he's saying this, you hear this gurgling behind him.
Yeah, and it's getting louder and louder.
He goes, I just used a little of the Appleton know-how, and the thing is getting louder and louder, and all of a sudden the pressure builds up of the water behind the head and pops the head out, and the head flies and hits Larry in the back of the head, knocking him
he
underwater.
falls into the water, yeah.
And then, that is a great. I love that. That was hilarious.
So funny.
It was
so funny. I
thing.
just imagine someone off screen like chucking that
He's
head
like,
at
throw that
Marklin Baker's head.
Yes, make sure you hit his big fat head.
It was so fast. Yeah, it was like really thrown really hard. And Balky freaks out. He's like, cousin, and he starts feeling around under the water to like save Larry. And then he pulls up the mannequin's head and looks at it and screams like, ah! And then Larry stands up in front of Balky, and then Balky screams again. There's a really funny little exchange there.
That would have freaked me out too if I just pulled the head out and be like, oh, that's not his head.
So then we kind of cut to the next scene, which is in the same basement, but a little while later. And now the water is higher. Now it's like chest
high.
level.
Oh, yeah. The
chest
water
high.
is chest high. And what are they doing? This is really strange at first. I was like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
Larry and Balky
This was a weird scene.
are in the middle of the flooded basement, chest high of water, and they have an aluminum trash can, and Balky is using a thing you flower pots with, right? A little, what do you call those? That's a
water flowers.
a water container to scoop out the water and put it in the trash can that is floating in the water.
Yeah.
Trying to bail, and it's really doing nothing, and the can is sinking. And Larry goes, Balky, now you see why bailing won't work. And Balky goes, yes, you're right, and I appreciate you letting me take the shot. And then he sprinkles the final water into the trash can, and it completely submerges and sinks out of
This little
view.
bit was so strange to me and felt so random. I almost wonder if there was, because like even these two lines, there's not really like a big joke in there. So I almost wonder if there was more in a previous script that got cut or something, or if this was like some inside joke, or I don't know. It didn't really make sense to me.
Just the idea of like, what did Balky think? What were they doing? Where was that water gonna go?
I get that, but it's like it wasn't enough of a payoff.
No, it seemed a little filler. It seemed like they needed a filler. What they needed was someone Marianne to get to the line to tell everyone how bad it is. And she says, somebody better do something. We are 4 inches from being deep fried. And it cuts over to Father Appleton, who is sitting next to the fuse box.
The electrical box,
with a ruler. I don't know where he got this ruler from. And he goes, he's measuring it. He goes, actually.
I wondered that too. I was like, where did he find a ruler?
He says, actually.
It's the basement. There's everything down there.
Yeah, but did he go into was the ruler in his pocket? What's happening?
No, he found it in one of the storage.
And, he's got to correct everyone. And so he's like, actually, we're 3.5 inches away from being electrocuted.
So I'm confused about like what's the time frame that the water rose from thigh high to chest high?
I don't know, minutes.
And like, what were they all doing in that time?
Standing around, thinking. Yes.
So anyway, Larry's like, so they're all worrying. They're very close to the electrical box now, the water is. And everyone's like, we're about to be deep fried. And then Larry says, don't worry, I've got another plan to get us out of here.
Oh, good.
And Gorpley's like, what? Another plan? Sticking a head in the pipe was a plan. And then Larry's father actually pipes up to defend him. He said, it was a good plan. And then for a minute, you think he's turned and he's finally appreciating his son. And then he adds, just poorly executed.
He's the master of...
It's like almost compliment.
The compliment insult. Compliment with the insult side.
Yeah.
With the side of insult on the back. It's hilarious. And Larry's disappointed, of course, because he still wants his father to just say, well done, son.
Yeah, he's disappointed. Balky steps in to try to like keep everybody focused and moving forward. And he says, listen, everyone, we can't lose hope now, because if we put our heads together, we can think of something. You know what they say, united we stand, and Delta is ready when you are.
Oh, boy. He's mushed 2 things together there. I love it.
So the first thing is the saying, united we stand, divided we fall.
Divided we fall.
But he took the first bit of that and he mapped United onto the airline United. And then we get a comparison to another airline that is Delta and a slogan that Delta was using in that time.
Oh my God, I didn't even catch the
In
United
that era.
and Delta parallel. That's actually
yeah, of course.
really brilliant.
That's why, he took United We Stand and looked and changed, went to the other meaning of United, which is the airline. Then we pull it and compare it to Delta Airline and its popular slogan used in advertising, commercials, radio jingles from 68.
Well, here's a little advertising history lesson real quick. We're going to interrupt.
Okay.
Delta is ready when you are. There's actually a page on their site. You can look at all their different slogans they use.
Oh, cool.
They first used Delta is ready when you are in 1968, used it again in 1984 for a couple of years, and then it came back in 1992.
Weird. It's a winner. They just
it's
liked
a winner.
it.
Here, so I have a couple of clips, though, I'm going to share real quick. Here
I feel like they tried other ones and they were like, nope, that one's better. Go back.
Yeah, no, sometimes you hit on one and you really don't need to change your slogan. Like, why are you changing your slogan? Not necessarily. Here's a clip from a Delta TV commercial from 1982 where you hear the slogan.
Coming through with more service going for you. Delta is ready when you are.
Delta is ready. I kind of remember
Ready
these.
when you are. I don't remember.
But here, I found this. Listen to this jingle from 1970. This was a Delta Airlines radio commercial, and they sing the slogan.
Delta is ready when you are. Delta is ready.
Oh, they changed it. Love it.
Delta is
What
there it
I
comes from.
particularly appreciate about this line and this joke, this wordplay, United We Stand and Delta is ready when you are, is you don't have to know any of that history. Like, it's cool that we can look it up and know about it, but you don't have to know it. And you will, even, 20, 40 years later, whatever we're talking about, even today, a viewer would hear this line and get it. It's like, we get that it's a play on words. We get that it's a mix of united we stand and divided we fall. And we get that it's an airline, a play on airlines and a Delta slogan, even if we've never heard that slogan before or didn't know about it.
Yeah, that's
It's a slogan
pretty good.
from that time. Yeah, that's pretty
pretty
remarkable writing that it still holds up on its own like that.
All right, so they got to figure out a way to get out of here. But Larry's father joins them in the water, and they're basically, the plan is, Larry says, we got to find something to knock the door down with. Okay, makes sense. And they're waiting around the water, and Balky goes, hey, cousin, maybe we could knock down the door with one of these beams. And over in the corner is a collection, conveniently, of large wooden beams leaning up against the wall, ready for use.
Yeah. And Larry's father says, good idea, Balky. And he tells the boys, let's take this beam to the stairs. And they go to grab one of the beams, and Larry's father is directing. He's like, Balky, you take that end. I'll take this end. Lawrence, you get in the middle. And then we see Balky raise one end of the beam in both hands above his head, his hands like stretched all the way above his head. And then Mr. Appleton takes the back end the same way, holding his hands all the way straight up, holding the beam. And then Larry in the middle with his hands straight up, but they're like an inch under the beam.
He can't even get
They
to
don't
the beam.
even touch the beam. And they all walk like that. And he's like, and then he just takes on his, remember when he was like
when he
getting
likes
the
to
refrigerator in
direct
season one?
things.
He's like, swing it around.
He's like, walk it
swing
on
it around.
over.
He's like
Okay,
directing
walk it over.
Yeah.
Walk it over. Swing
Walk it over,
on
swing it
Yep,
around.
good. Well, as if he has hands on it. He did not get, we found out last week, he did not get the height genes from the Appleton family. And so, Balky
It is so funny.
And Father Appleton are doing all the work. And he's like, okay.
Walk it over.
Swing
walk
it in.
over.
Yep.
Swing it
Okay.
around. Swing it
Okay.
on
So
in.
they get it all the way around to the stairs, and they hand it up. And Gorbley's noticed this. He goes, oh, that was close, Appleton. It almost touched your hands once.
Just to punctuate that joke a little more. So then he tells everyone to come down off the stairs into the water so that they can take their place up at the top with the beam. And Gorbley says, are you crazy? These are alligator shoes. And so we get this idea that Gorbley like pays a lot and tries to
Alligator shoes were, were fancy back then.
And then Jennifer's behind him, and she's like, well, good. Then they'll be right at home in the water. And she pushes him down the steps into the water.
They should be waterproof. It's alligator shoes. It's fine. So the girls and Gorpley get out of the way as Larry, Balky, and Father Appleton bring the beam up. And as they're passing by Gorpley, Larry's like, Mr. Gorpley, you could help us. Yes, which you could, because he's doing nothing.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, goody. And he joins them. And so the four of them have carried this beam all the way up to the landing.
Yeah.
And they're ready to, I guess, push down the door.
Yeah,
They're going to
I
swing
don't
it
really
and hit
get.
it, right?
Yeah, I don't really understand like the physics behind what they're
You're
trying
gonna
to do.
swing. It's
here,
like
but
it's like a battery.
it's like
ram.
a pendulum. Yeah, like
yeah,
a
he
barricade.
wants to use
yeah,
it
yeah.
like a battery ram. So
But the door is like solid. Like
I know
metal
it's solid steel and
looking.
there's a lock. Anyways, they're ready to go, and Larry goes, "Okay, on the count of 3, we're gonna ram this baby into the door." And they go 1. They're about to do it, and then Dad interrupts me. He goes, "Wait a minute." And Larry's like, "What is it, Dad?" And Father Appleton goes, "I think we should say ready, set, go." Nothing is ever good
Oh
enough
my gosh!
for Larry's dad, and he's got to have his own way. And then they start arguing about it. Larry's like, "Dad, there's a time and place to do ready, set, go. Right now, I don't think that's one of them." And I'm like, "What are you doing? Why are you
I
arguing?"
know. They have only 3.5 inches.
And then Father Appleton, Larry's dad, pulls a move on Larry that Larry pulls on Balky all the time. He goes, "Lawrence, how many basement doors have you knocked out?" "How many?" And Larry's like,
And Larry's like,
he's like, "How many?" "Well," and I was like, and I'm like,
many?
"Are they going to go through this whole thing?" Luckily, they're not, because Balky's the
Because
only
Balky
one.
has the same
Common
thought,
sense,
and
yes.
Balky's like, "Guys, how?" And you could see his face is like, "Are you kidding me right now?
funny.
Is this really happening? We need to get out of here." So but that's his face, and what he says is, "How about if we say 1, 2, 3, but we're thinking ready, set, go."
It's a good compromise.
Just to like show them how ridiculous they're being right now. So they turn back to the door, and Larry calls 1, 2, 3, and they all like swing back the beam and then
Dunk.
ram it into the door, and nothing happens. And he
Nope.
does it again, 1, 2, 3, and they ram the door again, and again nothing happens. And Gorpley's like, "Well, any other ideas, Appleton?" But Larry's determined. He's like, "No, we just need more weight behind us." And
Okay.
he calls the women who are waiting at the bottom of the stairs, Jennifer, Marianne, Lydia, to give them a hand. And he wants them to like come to the top and join them. I don't know if there's like more people holding the beam equals more force. I guess that's the idea.
Yeah, I mean, he pretty much explains what he's doing. But again, Father
Mr.
Appleton,
Appleton, ever the contrarian, is like, "I don't know, son. I don't think this landing can hold all of us."
Oh boy.
Which is a fair concern, but the point is he's still like in this crucial moment. Larry's trying to take the lead, and he's still
being
criticizing
undermined,
everything.
yeah, and being criticized. And Larry's like, "Trust me, Dad." He's like, "If the 4 of us keep hitting it, the door will give way eventually." Is what his father says to him, right? Not keeping the girls out.
Yeah.
Larry said that could take all night. It stands to reason. The more people, the more force, the quicker we'll open the door. You know what? They both have solid.
And and Larry's like so
opinions.
annoyed right
Yes.
now. I've never seen him.
He goes,
this
"And it's
annoyed.
my beam.
And it's my beam."
And Balky's like, "And a very handsome beam it is too, cousin." Trying to help.
He's trying to help. He also like tries to take his father's side
Yeah.
for a moment because
Yeah.
he says, "I think the point your father's trying to make is that this landing may not be able to support 7 people and your beam." And Larry is so annoyed right now. He just goes, "So prove me wrong."
Oh boy.
And which is like kind of out of character how annoyed
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like it's not the usual Larry types that we see.
Yeah.
So then he gets the ladies to come and join them. He's like, "Let's put our backs into this." And the ladies, kind of climb up and like take one in between each like take a spot in between each man.
Yeah.
And then we hear Lydia go, as they're preparing to swing, she goes, "Oh no, I hope I don't break a nail." And then there's an audience laugh. And I just rolled my eyes at this line, this like very 80s, like this
Yeah.
was such a cheap laugh and such a cheap joke
It kind of is.
at
It's
the
the worst.
expense of women.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, that's what the 80s were about, all these like cheap lines. But I just like, when we talk about PS Today later, we're going to come back to this line. This line will not will not happen in a show.
That is the main
these
concern
days.
of all women, of course.
I
We
just
all know
rolled
that.
I just like
It's the
and rolled
worst
my
thing
eyes.
that can happen to
I don't know. She's
modern
about to get electrocuted, and they had
American
her say,
woman.
"I hope I don't break a nail."
Okay,
Come
so
on,
the 7
where
of
are all
them.
the women writers on this show?
Paula, what was her name? Paula Roth. What are you
Paula,
doing?
maybe she wasn't on this episode.
Okay, so now the 7 of them are on the landing and this heavy beam, and they're all holding it, and they're like, okay, let's go on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. They pull back, they swing forward, they hit the door with the beam. Nothing happens. Nothing happens.
And Larry's father is there to point that out. He says it didn't knock down the door. And Larry says, well, it didn't knock the landing down either. And then as soon as he said that,
You know this is
whole,
coming.
the whole wooden landing starts to like shake under them and wobble. And then it like sort of falls.
This is the weirdest
slowly.
thing.
It
Yes.
slowly collapses, but
Yeah.
slowly
Yeah.
forward, like on an angle into the basement where the water is. And like the stairway breaks off, the rest of the stairway, it's just the top landing part.
The stairway
And it
breaks
kind of
off.
like
and-
lowers down into the water slowly.
like it's like you're on a ride at a carnival or something. Is what it reminded me of. Like clearly it's
And
on
now
a
they're all standing like chest deep
It's so
in the
funny
water.
because clearly they're
the landing
on a
still.
hydraulic lift. The stairs float away and it comes down, and I'm like, in what reality world?
I could see
would
it kind of like
fall
folded
like
in on
that?
itself.
No, the
Didn't
thing.
crack.
I mean,
It might happen like that.
I know they weren't going to have it collapse and everyone just fall into the water.
Yeah.
This was funny and also just bizarre. I'm like, oh my
Weird,
god,
yeah.
look at it slowly
I wonder what the like
lower.
conversation was.
Like, how do we do
in the
this?
production process?
What if it just
there.
comes forward and comes down? Why would
Yeah,
it do
slowly.
that? Does it matter? No.
Maybe somebody saw something happen like that and it's real. I don't know. And then once they're in the water, they're all like, what the heck? They're all chest height in the water. And then we just hear Larry go, well,
Well, I guess one of his.
and
whales.
his high pitched wells. Well, and we fade to black, and that's the end of our Act 1.
Oh boy, they're in deep water. Listener, join this conversation. Join our Facebook group where you can meet other fun listeners and fans of Perfect Strangers. There's a link in the show description, and I also post threads of the episodes we're going to record ahead of time so you can watch on Amazon Freevee, and you can maybe leave us a reason as to why did this landing collapse the way that, why? What are the physics at work with this landing
We need
collapsing
our engineers and our construction
softly
people
and
to chime
forward?
in.
Did the
Would a wooden landing to stairs slowly collapse
No,
like that?
no, it would never collapse like that, but it was funny. Anyways, join
Let
the
us
Facebook
know.
group.
Join the
We
Facebook
wanna
group.
meet you.
Let us know. We're dying to know. So we go into Act 2, and we're right where we left off. Once again, everyone's still on the wooden landing, but like submerged in the water in the middle of this flooded basement. And Larry's like, okay, so we've had a little setback. And Gorpley's like, a little setback? You mean like the Titanic had a little setback?
Yeah, it was a little
and
setback.
Larry, like everyone's being mean to Larry. And Larry is trying to defend himself. He says, at least I tried. I don't hear anybody else coming up with a plan to get us out of here. And then again, maybe his father says, you're right, son. You did
defending
have
him.
a plan.
Yeah.
What is this the turning point? Is this where his
Is this
father
finally-
comes around to appreciate him? Larry's quite pleased. He says, thanks, Dad. But then his father says, it just wasn't a very good plan.
Wow, this is not the point. Okay, he hasn't warmed up to him yet. And Larry is so dejected. He goes, I was just trying to help. And Gorpy's like, you want to help? Go play in the deep end. And Larry sadly
is
walks
weird,
off
too.
the landing and like walks into the water away.
Like,
I don't
where's
know
he
what he's gonna do.
going?
Yeah, I don't know where he's going. And the water now is like shoulder high. I don't know. He's just
It's
going
very
over there.
high.
Where are you going? Everybody's
Where
in the
is he
same
going
room.
into
Yeah.
the deep end? Gorpley just banished him off the landing.
But this didn't sit well with Valky. He scolds Gorpley. He says, shame on you. Didn't you ever make a mistake? And Gorpley goes, yeah, come into this party. Solid burn there.
Oh my God,
That's
that
a
is
solid burn, though.
Yeah.
So Valky heads over to Larry. Marianne notices the water is getting deeper. And then Marianne has this great line. She goes, if we don't get out of here soon, we might as well forget about the party. She's still
Oh,
worried.
sweet, sweet Marianne.
She's still worried about the
She's
party.
still worried about the party.
She had half a drink and a cupcake
I wonder
up
if
there.
any other guests showed up in the time.
No,
since
they don't
we've all
have
been
any
down
other
there.
friends, clearly.
They do. They invited more people.
Yeah.
So that's a funny quip from Larry Ann. Then we get Balky, who goes to check on Larry. So he walks over to like stage right or whatever where Larry walked off to. And Larry he's like up to his shoulders in the water now.
The water's higher.
And Balky's like, cousin, everybody's getting cranky. And Larry says, it's because they're going to die and it's all my fault. They hate me, don't they? Oh, wow.
Well,
so dark.
At least he's very self-aware.
So direct, very self-aware.
The parts of this episode get really dark. Again, Larry is put everyone's lives
This next joke
in danger.
is pretty dark, too, because he says, they hate me, don't they? And Balky says, well, of course they don't. Don't be ridiculous. And then Larry explains that he really wanted this weekend to be a weekend his father would never forget. And then he goes, now I've killed him. Oh, boy. And then Balky says, well, it will be a weekend your mother will never forget.
What an amazing dark joke. I love it.
What?
I love
a dark joke for TGIF. My goodness.
It's so shocking and hilarious that they were like, it's fine. I mean, I guess you could kind of do that now, but
I was like, wow.
If you were like on a Disney primetime like sitcom, like I don't know if they let that fly anymore, but it's gonna be a weekend your mother will never forget. Oh my god, that's great. That's so crazy.
Wow.
Wow.
So Larry just looks at him in shock and just like lets that comment pass. Whoever wrote that, like really it wasn't characteristic of the rest of the writing, but like someone took their shot and it made it in the show. And
you don't even have Larry reacting going, Balky.
No, he doesn't say anything. He just says, and I'll die without, he's stuck in his pity party still. So he says, and I'll die without ever making my father proud of me.
Oh my God. Lots of death talk. It is the end.
Dark.
People are facing their mortality again on Perfect Strangers. This isn't the first time. This isn't the first time. Yeah. So Balky's trying to help, and Balky actually is trying to help reconcile Walter and Larry and the father and son. And he tells Larry, he says, maybe your father is proud of you, and you just don't know it. And Larry said he's never said it. And Balky says fathers don't always say what they feel. And he tells Larry, if you tell your father how you feel, maybe you will be surprised at how he feels.
Cheers, Balky, mending relationships.
Very good advice.
The Meposian way.
They just need to open up to each other.
And Larry says, well, he wants to, but he doesn't know how to get started. So Balky says he's going to help him. And he calls over Uncle Walter. He says, would you swim over here for just a moment, please?
Yes, he does.
And he says, Cousin Larry has something he wants to tell you. And so Mr. Appleton, Uncle Walter, swims over to them or like wades over to them. And and as he's coming over, Balky tells Larry, just open your mouth and let your heart do the talking, which is nice advice.
Oh, that's great advice.
So his father's like, what is it, son? And Larry starts. He's like, Dad, and then he realized like Balky's just like standing right there between them. Awkwardly. So he goes, Balky, could you give us a minute? And then this is just so weird and funny again. And Balky just like looks at Larry, looks at his father, and he looks around. There's nowhere to go. So he just like slowly goes down into the water until his whole head is down under there.
And you don't even see him like taking a breath or anything. He just submerges.
It's weird.
Under
it's weird
the water.
And funny.
It's so great.
So funny.
So just remember, Balky is underwater starting
Balky's
right
underwater.
now.
I don't know. Maybe he like goes away and pops up somewhere else. We don't know, but we just see him go down into the water. And then Larry has this heart to heart with his dad. He says, we may not have much time left, but we need to talk. And this is another funny thing. He goes, we need to talk, you and me. And then his father goes, you and I, Lawrence.
He's still correcting
him. Like, you and I. And then he's like, well, it's not so much you and I, it's more you. Well, it's you when you're relating to me, to me. He gets all caught up in this. He's so nervous and flustered around his father. And so his father's like, Lawrence, if you want a career in journalism, you've got to be more articulate. Oh, my goodness. They're about to die.
And he's still just criticizing everything.
Him. Reminds me of a parent we both know.
Yes, but perfect moment for Larry to call his dad out. He says, this is exactly what I'm talking about. He says nothing, and now he's just pouring his heart. He tells his father, nothing I do is ever good enough for you. And then we hear some sappy, sensitive music in the background.
Almost like the lesson time
Almost
music.
like lesson time music, but this is like
but we know
heartfelt
it's like
conversation
some
music.
Heart-to-heart happening, yeah.
He tells him, when I was in 6th grade, I got a 96 on a test. You asked what happened to the other 4 points.
Classic. You'd think he was an Asian immigrant.
Oh my God! We can totally relate to that. That's
Classic.
yes,
yeah.
you think he was an Asian kid, and he goes, and now I got a good job at the newspaper, and you tell me I should work in television.
Classic.
Again, something we can all relate to. He asks him straight out, when are you going to be proud of me?
And his father says, Lawrence, I've always been proud of you.
Aww.
And Larry says, well, all you do is criticize. Just once I'd like to hear you say, well done, son. And his father, it hits him, and he admits, like, yes, I do criticize you a lot, but it's because I want you to be the best you can be. For heaven's sake, I'm always bragging about you. I tell everyone what a wonderful son I have. Which is great on his father's part, trying to save his, cover his tracks. But Larry comes up with what all of us children have thought at one point or another, but you never tell me.
Oh, I know. Yes.
How is your son
on.
gonna know if you never say it to him?
Yeah, this part,
right?
this got me in the
This is
feels.
very
a little bit.
relatable
It's
for
very
me.
relatable,
Yeah.
very emotional. Got me in the feels.
Yeah.
And Father Appleton admits, I don't do that, do I? He says he always found it hard to express himself, his feelings, to those he loves the most. And then he says, and I love you, Lawrence. And Larry says, I love you, Dad. And then they hug. And they hug real quick, and then they pull back, and they're holding hands in the water. Now, there's one person missing here. Let's not
Where's
forget.
Balky?
Balky's been underwater this whole time, and as they separate, they're holding hands. Balky slowly reemerges between them,
inside
holding
their hands,
inside their hands. And he sees their hands, and he's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. And Larry's like annoyed. He's like, Balky, we need another minute, please.
Oh, they're not done.
And Balky's like, what? He's like, please. And then Balky like sinks again into the water for a second time.
Was there somebody down there with like a oxygen tank or scuba gear? Or?
Oh, he probably was just off screen.
No, but he's underwater. You think he popped up? He's underwater.
He probably just
I think he
came
held
out.
his breath the whole time.
You mean for the audience's sake, the live audience's sake? Maybe.
He's underwater. Like
maybe. I
something's
don't know.
happening
We'd have
under
to ask
there.
them that
How did they
if
pull
we
this
ever got
off?
to talk to them.
Yeah.
Like in that water scene, were you really
Did they
underwater
have
the whole
to
time
break?
for the sake of the studio audience reaction?
Or did they break?
Or did
for-
you pop up and come out of the water off screen?
Or is there somebody down there from production with a scuba gear?
Right.
Just give like, here, put this on.
So anyway, he tells Balky they need another minute. Balky goes back into the water. And he's like, his face is like so confused and shocked. It's so funny. And he's just sopping wet. And then Larry says, except for the fact that we're going to die soon, I've never been happier.
He says it to his father. And his father's like, we're not dead yet. Let's find a way out of here. And they start walking away. When Larry turns, because he hears the sounds of bubbles, he forgot about Balky, and he sees Balky floating face down in the water. And Larry's like, Balky, and he pulls him up, and Balky just whips his hair back, water goes flying, he goes, just kidding, cousin. Cousins should joke more.
Yes,
they should.
That's only the second time they've used this, I think.
Yeah, but a very not appropriate time.
And
for
what a
this
dark
line.
joke that is. Balky just pretended to be drowned.
More.
Oh my God, he just pretended he drowned.
Okay, so now they've mended their relationship. They're working together. They're determined. Balky's having fun. They're determined to get out of there. And Balky says, cousin, I wish MacGyver were here. That man could take a Hershey bar, a thumbtack, and a rubber band and make a bomb that would blow the socks off that door.
Yes, I love this MacGyver.
A great 80s MacGyver
reference. This was a show I watched religiously.
Tell our listeners about MacGyver.
MacGyver was a character played by Richard Dean Anderson. The original series ran from 1985 to 1992. So we would have been late in this show. And actually, the show got rebooted in 2015 for a few years.
I saw that. I looked it up for some reason recently, and I saw that.
I never watched the reboot. I used to, when I was little,
didn't
I used to watch MacGyver. And just what Balky has said is how you could take random things and make a bomb. Yeah. That was like every episode. Every episode
he was like
of MacGyver.
some special ops guy that would go into like like tense situations like all around the world where there was like a bomb about to go off or a rocket about to explode or something, and he would like find a piece of gum and like
But apparently, like he was really smart,
disarm
right?
the bomb right at the last
He
minute.
knew like chemistry. He knew how to defuse bombs. He knew he was a scientist. And he was like,
what was his backstory on the show? I don't remember.
I mean, but here's the thing: is when I was younger and I watched this, I was like, this show is the most amazing thing ever. If you go back and watch it now, it's not that good. It's really cheesy and corny and dumb.
But he had that like 80s like coiffed mullet, like helmet hair.
Yes, he had a mullet and the poofy hair.
Yeah.
But kind of like a John Stamos.
He had military background.
Like,
his character had military background, bomb disposal, genius level intellect, proficiency in multiple languages, engineering skills. One of these guys.
You may also know the Saturday Night Live parody of it called MacGruber. With Will Forte, which is hilarious. He got a TV show to movie. MacGruber is hilarious. But I love MacGyver. You know, Quantum Leap is back. It actually started this week, the reboot.
I know. I saw that. So I'm so excited.
I gotta watch
Another
that.
excellent 80s show. Not a comedy, but was
sci-fi.
one of my favorites.
I
sure.
loved Quantum Leap.
Also, there was quite a lot of MacGyver references in the early seasons of The Simpsons.
Oh, right.
With Patty and Selma, Marge's sisters, being obsessed with MacGyver.
Well, MacGyver would have still been on in those early seasons when The Simpsons started. And
so I don't know. I haven't watched recent Simpsons. I don't know if they're still carrying that MacGyver jokes. All right. But anyway, Balky references MacGyver, and Mr. Appleton, Uncle Walter pops up and he says, MacGyver's got nothing on Lawrence. Remember that time you got the chemistry set and you blew up the garage?
Okay.
And Larry said, I loved that chemistry set. It was the best Christmas present I ever got. And his father goes, I believe it was a birthday present. So even after they've loved each other publicly and they cleared all the tension about being proud of him, he's still correcting him.
Yeah, he's still correcting him. And Larry,
your parents can't change.
No.
Yeah.
You just got to deal with it, right? You just got to humor them.
And then Larry starts to argue back. He's like, no, Dad, I distinctly remember that was. And then Balky's like, cousin. He's like, I have to stop them again because this will go on forever and we're going to die. He says, cousin, is that the chemistry set you won't let me play with? And Larry says, Balky, it's too dangerous. That's why we keep it in the basement. And then there's a beat. And then both Larry and his father go, the basement.
And then they start swimming away. But then Balky, he's just a little bit behind. He goes, guys, that chemistry set could be in the basement.
And they're in the basement. How convenient. So then this is a really funny thing. Larry's just like, duh. And he grabs Balky by the ear
and pulls him
Ow. And the three of them go over to the storage space area.
Very Three Stooges. I love that.
Yeah. And so we kind of like transition to the next scene, which is like a little while later. And we see that the water is very, very close to the bottom of that fuse box now. It's like an inch away.
They're running out of time. Ticking clock.
And Larry's got some kind of floating table. There's like a tabletop or some platform floating in the water. And he's got this chemistry set, and there's chemicals, and all the pieces are out, and he's like mixing things. Yes. There's boxes and powders and beakers and all this stuff. And he's in the water around this floating table, and Balky's with him, and his father's with him. And Jennifer and Marianne are still over on the submerged landing.
And the funniest part of this is that Lydia is next to them in an inner tube, just floating like she's in a lazy river on vacation. She's like, we're going to be electrocuted. I'm just going to hang out here.
Gorpley is like tied outside of the inner tube, Lydia's inner tube, but like tied to it.
Oh, he's holding the inner tube,
He's holding the inner tube like with one arm, and his tie is wrapped around his head so as to not get it wet, because it must be some like fancy tie, like his alligator shoes or something. So his tie's wrapped around his head like a frat boy type of thing.
Or it reminded me of like Rambo, like when Rambo puts the bandana on.
Yeah, but really it's like to not get it wet, I think.
Yeah, Larry's working on something. He goes, sulfur. And he gets the sulfur and he pulls it in. And he goes to Balky, goes, potash. And Balky goes, gesundheit. And then Larry just turns to him and goes, give me the potash.
I've never heard of potash.
Potash.
I guess it's a chemical.
It's pot. Yeah. Is it ash from a pot? I don't know what it is.
No, it's potash. Potash. I would have said
potash.
Potash. I don't know what that is, but Is it a real thing?
I think it's potash is a word. I've seen it at like the garden stores.
Fertilizer.
Yeah, I've seen it in the garden area at the Home Depot.
Contains potassium.
Potash.
It's a potassium.
Potassium ash. So Balky gives him the potash. She pours it in. But at this point, Larry is a little panicked. He doesn't remember things. He goes, "Oh, was it 75% fulminate of zinc or potassium nitrate?" And Gorpley goes, "Who are we kidding? He can't even make instant coffee." Gorpley has no confidence that Larry's going to get this right.
Which is really funny because just earlier this week, I met someone who had no idea what instant coffee was.
Oh, really?
Do it. Yeah.
You just add water.
Anyway.
It's not
I know.
hard.
They're like, you didn't use the coffee machine at all? I was like, oh. No.
Starbucks
Let me tell you about
VO.
instant coffee.
Yeah, Starbucks makes.
Okay, so Gorpley's giving him a hard time, and then his father comes to his rescue again. He's like, "Listen, pal, if my son can blow up an entire garage, he can certainly blow up a little door." So he's defending him now, and Larry says, "Thanks, Dad." And then Jennifer from the back, from the landing's like, "Come on, Larry, you can do it." And Larry's like, "I don't know." He's getting very nervous. It's not coming back to him. And then out of nowhere, we hear Marianne from behind them from the landing with Jennifer. She goes, "Well, if it were me, Larry, I'd go with 10% potash, 15% sulfur, and 75% zinc."
What?
Just matter of factly. And everyone turns and looks at her. And she goes, "We used to summer in Beirut," which to me was the absolute funniest line of this episode. I don't know why, but I lost it.
Beirut.
I lost it at the thought of Marianne saying we used to summer in Beirut. And why? We might have to explain this a little bit. Because
yes.
Beirut was in conflict
in the 80s.
In the 80s, late 80s, early 90s specifically. Right at this time, there was like a lot of conflict happening in Beirut, and there was always there were bombings in the news.
They would always bomb the U.S. embassy in Beirut.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Suicide bombers. I think it was Hezbollah was doing all this. I don't know.
Well, it was internal conflict and other things. Like it was just a hot mess, and
so Beirut.
There were a lot of bombings. The bottom line is, there were a lot of bombings in the news coming in international news from Beirut.
So now the picture in my head is Marianne and her family in the desert wearing headscarves,
building bombs,
learning how to mix bombs, helping out unknowingly.
Hilarious. But just, I mean, where they took this Marianne moment of clarity, I just lost it. I thought it was so funny. I don't know why, but this line to me was the winner. I
thought she was going to say something like, "My father was a chemist" or something, but they even
used to summer in Beirut.
We used to summer in Beirut.
Funny.
Marianne
chef kiss to this
knows
line.
how to build a bomb, basically.
So Larry's like, okay. And then he's like, listens to what she said and he mixes all the stuff. And he's like, all right, I think we're ready. And now he needs something to use as a fuse. And Jennifer suggests, what about your tie? And he's like, well, his tie's been in the water this whole time. It's still tied around his neck.
That's not going to work.
It won't work. It's wet. And then Balky sees Gorpley's tie around his head. He's like, we could use Mr. Gorpley's tie. It's dry and it's making a nifty fashion statement.
Nifty fashion
and
statement.
Gorpley, of course, is like, wait, this is a $50 tie. Oh my God, $50.
That's still
I don't know. Is that expensive for a tie? I have no idea how much ties cost.
$20 and up. 50's not very expensive, but it's still kind of. But I guess that's it.
I have never purchased a tie.
In 1989 money, $50 tie was fancy. And at this, Lydia kicks him underwater. You see her make a movement, and she goes, "Just give him the tie, Sam." And Gorpley's like, "All right." And he takes it off.
Why does Lydia have such control over Gorpley?
I don't know. This guy doesn't take anything from anyone except when Lydia says something. He'll do it. While she's floating in the inner tube, that's the funniest bit.
So he gives him the tie, and Larry puts one end of the tie into this little carton where all the powder chemicals are. And he's like, all right, now I need something to light it with. And they all check their pockets and stuff. And his father pulls out a lighter and gives it to him. And Larry looks at it and he says, "Dad, it's the lighter I gave you when I was 10. Oh, heart. My heart.
He
so
still
nice.
has it.
And his father's like, "Yes, it is. And you were 11. Still doing it. We are down to the wire here.
You can't
And he's
change.
still doing it.
So Larry tells Balky to lift him up on his shoulders. And this is great, too, because Balky goes submerges under the water, and slowly you
Puts
see
his head
Larry
under his legs and
rise as
stands
Balky
up,
lifts
yeah.
him up. And like he's doing this. Bronson is doing all this
Yeah.
underwater stuff.
Yeah.
He's holding his breath. He's picking him up.
For sure.
Larry has the milk carton in one hand with the fuse and the lighter in the other. And he walks him over to the door.
On his shoulders,
his shoulders.
So now the door is now like the landing has fallen. So the door
It's
is
pretty
like
high up.
high on
Yeah.
the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's able to reach up and set the box on top of the handle. And then he lights the tie, and then they scatter and they run and they fall in the
They
water.
kind of run in the water as fast as they can away to where everyone is standing, and they fall into the water. And we see the tie like light and it ignite, and it goes up and it goes up and it reaches the carton, and then nothing happens. And as that's happening, they're like scampering away in the
It
water.
fizzles out.
And they come out of the water, and then nothing happened. And Gorpley's like, "You burned a $50 tie for nothing. I could have been buried in that tie."
Oh,
That's
geez,
also
Gorpley.
very funny because they're about to die. And then after he gets to say that disparaging line, then suddenly we hear an explosion from the carton, and the door like blows open. And everyone cheers, and everyone's like, "Yay!" And then Larry's like, "Come on, let's get out of here," because it's so close. They have to get out. And at that point, my brain was like thinking about the logistics of
How you gonna
how
get
they
out?
would get
They
out
gotta
of that
have to-
door that's
yeah.
way up
You
high.
crawl out of there. Lift them up on
Where they
your
just
shoulders.
like push each other on their shoulders
yeah.
and push them out and pull each other out. I was
Yeah.
like fixated on that. But of course, this is sitcom television in the 80s, and we have to keep it moving, so we don't see all that. But before they even get out, they're like, okay, so the thing exploded. They're like, all right, let's go. You'd think they would make a mad dash because electrocution is going to happen soon. And Mr. Appleton goes, wait a minute, and stops everyone. I'm like, what are you doing? You have to get out of there. And he grabs Larry and like puts his hands on his shoulders, looks at him and goes, well done, son. I was like, oh my God, you can do that after you're safe. But Larry looks very pleased and proud of himself.
Oh, and then he goes, now let's get out of here.
Now let's get out of
An
here.
alternate take of this would have been hilarious where his father goes, well done.
And then they all get electrocuted.
Oops, too late. Also, pretty nifty practical explosion.
If he was like, well done.
Whoops. No, when the door
Yeah, the
explodes.
explosion was good.
It was pretty good. Like, there's a loud flash, there's smoke, it flies open, it looked good. It's all practical, done
Yeah.
right there. So, yeah, we don't see them crawl out as it transitions to the next morning in the apartment. And Larry is standing there with his father. His dad is about to leave. You also notice his father came and left for a visit, and he has, like, no luggage. There's no bags. Like,
Well,
did
maybe
he just sleep
I
in that
imagined
suit?
he was staying in a hotel.
Oh, I thought he was going to stay with them. Maybe you're right.
No, I think white parents, when they visit their kids,
They-
stay in hotels.
Okay, maybe he can afford a nice hotel. He's like, I don't want to live
They're
here.
adult kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless they have like.
I was like, where's your luggage? What are you doing?
I don't know. His sister stayed with him in the apartment.
Yeah.
But that's a sister. I think
Yeah.
the father would stay in a hotel.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that could explain that. But so then we cut to the next scene. So of course we didn't see how they actually got out or if they got out in time. Obviously they got out in time. But wouldn't there have been some electrical damage even without them there when
Well,
the
the water
water
was
hit?
still
They
coming
still
in.
didn't stop the water.
Yeah.
The water
Yeah.
was still coming when the water hit the fuse box.
This is all Carl Winslow's
happened?
fault because he poured concrete over the drain and didn't tell anyone and never got it.
Did
fixed.
I do that?
Did
It was
I?
even before Steve.
Yes, didn't do it.
But wouldn't it cause some kind of damage or
Oh, no.
Or
Well,
like
that were-
spark or something.
That reminds me, I also read, I believe that basement water tank set is also the same set that is used as Steve Urkel's house's basement on Family Matters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the,
Did they do water stuff? Because it's a water tank set.
No, but they may have just taken the walls out of the water tank.
Oh,
but
okay.
it's the basement set is like Steve Urkel's
Well,
basement. Similar-
Recycle, reuse.
You got it.
Reduce.
Good, yes.
Okay, so we just believe that they got out in time and nothing was damaged and no
Maybe Lydia and
electrocution
Gorbley
happened.
got electrocuted. We don't know.
We
Maybe
don't know.
only
No,
some
I
of them
think
got it.
maybe we don't see them, but anyway, or the girls even.
Yeah.
But we cut to the next scene, which is the next morning. Everybody's all dry now. They're clean clothes. we're in the apartment, and Larry's there in the living room with his father and with Balky, and his father's leaving, and Larry's like, I wish he didn't have to leave so soon. And we get a little bit of local insight here. His father says, I got to be back by 7. If I leave now, I'll miss the rush hour on I-94.
Oh, that's
this
a real
is
thing.
Our very own Interstate 94.
I know that. He said a real
it.
thing. He said the thing.
Yeah,
it's a real play.
He said a real Chicago thing.
A real interstate. It's a real high freeway.
And then Larry goes to remember something. He goes to the bathroom. He comes back with his shoes, with his father's shoes. And he says, your shoes were still wet, so I stuffed them with paper so they'll be okay till you get home. And he gives him the shoes. And his father is still doing the father thing. He's like, but if you get your shoes wet and you don't put shoe trees in them, you can kiss them goodbye. And Larry's like, no, Dad, the paper will absorb the moisture. And then his dad goes into the thing again. He's like, Lawrence, how many shoes have you dried? And Larry goes, today, 14. Wait, 7 people's shoes.
Yes, there were 7 people, 14.
There were 7 people.
And then
Larry dried all of their shoes.
I love this kind of conclusion of this. Larry's dad goes, well, then I guess you know what you're doing.
There it is.
Finally, he relents and tells Larry that he knows what he's doing.
There it is.
And Larry
thought
says,
it wasn't
going to
happen, but it happened.
Yes, that was great. That was a nice little touch.
And then Balky comes out running toward them from the kitchen. He says, Uncle Walter, I made you a nice big plate of moogly buzachmonk to take to Madison. And Uncle Walter asks what it is, and Balky explains pig bladder stuffed with cheese.
Of course, you know it was going to be pig bladder stuffed with something or some part of the pig.
And so he gives him this little plate, and his father says, Balky, I can honestly say that meeting you is an experience I will never forget. And Balky says, a lot of people say that. And then Balky runs back to the kitchen for something else he forgot, and when he's there, Larry goes, Dad, I wouldn't eat those or you'll be stopping a lot.
Oh, boy. So Larry has tried the moogly buzachmonk.
And so he's like, oh, thank you for the advice, son. And he gives him the plate. And then he's about to leave, and Balky comes running back with a big paper bag, and he takes the plate from Larry and dumps it into the bag and gives it to his father.
He almost got away without taking the moogly
to take it for the road. And so they say their goodbyes, and then at the end, Larry's father just quietly looks at him and goes, bye, son.
Aww.
And Larry just says, bye, Dad. And there's still no hug.
No.
At the end, but
they hugged in the water. That'll keep them their hug culture going for years.
Yeah, for 20 years.
Yeah, they don't have to hug again ever.
Yeah. So then he leaves. His father leaves, and it's just Balky and Larry, and they walk over to the couch, and Larry says, "Balky, I want to thank you for having me have that talk with my dad." And they sit down, and somewhere in here we get lesson time music, I think.
I don't know. I think they burned the music when they were.
Oh, they burned the music in the earlier emotional scene. Okay. So they sit down, and Balky says, or Larry says, you Mipiats may not have television or radio or indoor plumbing, but you really know how to talk to each other. So he's kind of being like his father here.
He's being a little condescending.
Giving a compliment, but it's in a condescending way, and it's problematic at best. And Balky just says, there isn't that much else to do. And he says, it's like we always say on Mipos, a few well-chosen words with a loved one are worth more than the picture that came with the frame, even if that picture is Olivia Newton-John. Wait, what? So this is a play on a picture is worth 1,000 words.
A picture is worth 1,000 words.
And he flips it. Well-chosen words are worth more than a picture, and then added the picture that comes with the frame, and then added a tag about Olivia Newton-John, who R.I.P. passed recently.
Of course, she was huge in the 80s from Grease and other things, and she had songs and her music. Yeah.
Larry says, you know what? Let's just relax for the rest of the weekend. And Balky says, great idea. And he goes, what do you say we get 2 towels, go down to the basement and take a dip? And Larry goes, I'll call the girls. But wait, the water is still
They're gonna go
gushing out. They're going to get electrocuted. How are they joking about that? That's not even, I don't understand what happened. Engineers and plumbers, give us a call. Let us know what's happening with this basement water situation.
They now have a swimming pool in the basement for recreation. That's all that happened.
and that you can get electrocuted.
Well,
in.
cut the power. Just
And
cut
the
power.
water is still coming out of the pipe. But no, presumably once they got out, they were able to like call a
Tell the
plumber to
landlord or
come
something. Yeah.
and
The
stop
water's
it.
still
Yeah,
there.
that's
You
right.
can go take a dip.
All right. I forgot about that. And that's the end. We get credits right here. And that is how they are saved their own lives once again at the end of this two-parter.
Listener, check out our TeePublic shop if you want some fun Dance of Joy podcast swag. Visit danceofjoypod.com/shop, and there's t-shirts and hoodies and lots of fun accessories, cell phone cases, all with a Dance of Joy logo on them. Adorn yourself like Balky wears bests with Dance of Joy hoodies.
Yes.
So, yes, another two-parter, like we said, where Larry puts everyone's lives in danger, except this time, Larry is the one that gets him out of the jam. He actually fixes it.
Well, it's a combination of like Balky mentioning MacGyver
Yes,
and then his
yes.
father reminding him about the chemistry. It was really like teamwork.
It
here.
was a team effort.
But Larry, in the end, coming through with the chemistry, and Marianne telling him the formula.
Oh, yes.
It was
Everyone
like
helped.
everybody
Yeah.
involved, and Mr. Gorpley's dry tie.
Oh,
and-
everybody pitched in except for Lydia, who did nothing.
Well, Lydia
She made him.
Gorpley
She made
give him
yes,
the
yes.
tie. Jennifer didn't do anything. She
No.
just cheered.
Wait, because I remember when they went skiing, it was Balky who successfully
Yeah,
dug
that's
out
right.
and found
That's
everyone.
right.
When they went camping and they got stranded, who saved them in that one? I can't remember. I forget what happens. It probably wasn't Larry. Maybe it was Larry. I can't. I don't even remember. But
Oh, boy,
I
we're
love
getting
how.
old.
Yeah, we'll see if this trend continues. I don't know if are there any more two-parters in the remaining seasons, and is it about Larry putting everyone's lives
What
in
did
danger?
happen? They were stuck on the river. They fell into the water. Then they came out of the water onto the landing. How did they get out?
That was, of course, Up a Lazy River Part 1 and 2. No, there's that bear incident, and Larry faints, and then the next scene they're home. They're back. They're walking into their apartment,
Oh yeah, Larry saved them from the bear.
and then somehow they got home, and it was fine. But again, another instance where Larry puts everyone's life in danger and then saves their life. So I don't know what's worse.
And they somehow make it to entering their apartment again. Make it back to their apartment, and we don't see the details. What did you think? Did you enjoy this two-parter? What do you think compared to other two-parters?
I like the addition of Father Appleton and seeing where Larry gets all his quirks and seeing them like reconcile and get to
And the stakes were really high this time. They were an inch away from getting electrocuted.
I mean, there was electrocution, there was flooding, drowning, there's an explosion.
There was bombs
There's
and
bombs.
summering
There's a lot
in Beirut.
A lot of crazy things. I wasn't sure how they
a
were
mannequin head and a beam.
how they were going to get out. Yeah.
And the landing, a slow breakdown of the landing.
In terms of cliffhangers, good cliffhanger, good resolution, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I thought it was good. It was enjoyable. There was water. There was physical comedy. I am still a little confused about like the pace and rate at which the water rose in this
The water
basement and how
timeline
long
is
all
a
that
little
took.
off.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's weirdly paced, but
And like, what were they doing in all that time that the water was rising? They could have done all of this stuff earlier.
and all the actors
while the water was rising.
are cold and wet while making this. I mean, this is the most water.
But yeah, it was a very involved episode to produce, I
technically,
imagine.
Yes. What did our listeners think of this episode, sister?
Well, listener Nicole Stoner, cousin Nicole, says Balky mentions the word moogly again. This time it's the pig bladder stuffed with cheese. He gives Walter, stuffed with cheese that he gives Walter at the episode's end. He has the moogly figurine carvings in his room from Poetry in Motion.
Yeah.
Remember that? Not long ago. And she says, I wonder if moogly is Meposian for pig. Could be.
I believe the Moogly thing, I remember reading something about that it was a nickname for Bronson Pinchot's actual girlfriend, or a word that they came up with, and he threw it in.
Moogly.
So it had
Moogly,
something,
moogly.
something to do with his girlfriend.
Reminds
at the time.
me of Mowgli. What's the kid's name
Mowgli
in Jungle
from
Book?
Jungle Book.
Mowgli.
Yes, Mowgli.
Yeah.
Great.
Mowgli.
Reminds me of the commercial for Snickers where the guy paints it wrong and he goes,
Great googly moogly.
moogly.
Yeah. And then we have Cousin John Adama chiming in, and Cousin John writes, let me start by noting how off this episode feel. Yeah, I mean, we kind of had that thought too, right?
Yeah.
And he writes, I'm sure the only reason this was padded to 2 episodes was to justify the cost of the waterproof basement set. More noticeably, Balki is practically an extra in this story. Ignore their relationship, and we're left with a story that could have been done in virtually any sitcom of the time. Well, a lot of these stories were done, in fact, in a lot of sitcoms. That being said, I really enjoyed Larry's father. You can see exactly where Larry gets it from. Most sitcoms show how different the parents are to generate conflict. It's compelling to see them driving each other mad by being so similar, which is also a very relatable real life problem that many people feel with their parents.
Yeah.
And then Cousin John gives us his wrap up of this episode, a very Larry focused story and fairly drab story, leaving me pretty cold on this pair of episodes. I give it a generous C. Ouch. Okay.
I do. I think
some fair points there, yeah.
I think the dad was great. That was like the saved everything. So it was the
and I don't agree that Balki was so much a side character, because it was Balki's insistence that they reconcile their differences and talk to each other. Balki insisted that Larry talk to his father, and it was Balki's like communication skills or Meposian whatever that got them to like finally get to the bottom of that.
Also, he held his breath for easily a few minutes, right? Total.
That as well. And he was there stopping their arguments from carrying forward to keep them focused on.
They would have been in there and they would have got electrocuted.
How many times? How many? So, I mean, yeah, he was a little bit extra in the story, but I don't agree that he was like completely, I think he was still a part of their.
It was a team effort, though. You're right.
And it was showing like that Balki has become so much of a best friend to Larry that he knows him like a lot better, and then his father knows him and like encourages him, stuff like that. You know, like they're all intertwined at this point.
Don't be ridiculous was said once.
Of course I have. Don't be ridiculous.
But no Dimitri sheep appearance.
No Dimitri. We could have had like a spare Dimitri in the basement or something.
Oh my God.
By. That would have been funny. Or like in a boat.
Yeah.
Dimitri in a little canoe floating by, and he's like, oh, there's my other.
At the end, you put Dimitri on the bookshelf wearing like snorkels or something, like a snorkel set.
Yeah. Or like galoshes or something.
But then we would have been like, how did Dimitri.
Or a tie around his head.
Oh, like a tie. If they did the water thing in the basement, be like, how did Dimitri get in the basement? Oh, this is another Dimitri.
Old Dimitri, yeah.
But Dimitri floating by in the background would have been hilarious. That'd have been hilarious.
Okay, now it's time for the segment of our show that we call Perfect Strangers Today, or PS Today, in which we talk about, can this episode be redone today? Would it hold up? What things would be different? And we started this conversation last week, obviously, with the part 1, and said, sure, there are still plumbing issues, but you'd have to account for why nobody has their cell phones down there. But we thought maybe it could have been like they could have collected them all at the party to make it more sociable or whatever. Or like some other reason why they don't have their phones or any means to communicate outside of this basement. Or Google likes plumbing solutions.
We did mention there's 2 lines that are probably problematic. You picked up on
this episode for sure. Like, I do not think that would have made it out of the writer's room with Lydia saying, "Oh, I don't want to break a nail."
That is low. I mean, low hanging
my
fruit.
best hope would be that it wouldn't make it out of a writer's room today because there would be women around. But sadly,
it's so dated.
I kind of think it might still make it out of a writer's room.
It's
today.
it's a lazy, low hanging fruit.
It is
line,
so
right?
cringy. I just rolled my eyes so hard I almost broke my eyeballs.
But at least we've come past that, so that's a positive. But then I think
what was the other
Beirut line may also have to be changed.
Beirut might have been more funny than it would have to be a more timely, explosive reference, but it would have been like dark like the rest of some of these lines. Yeah. Oh yeah, and we had those dark lines about dying and stuff.
I don't know.
And killing his father.
They would do that now. Like,
I don't know. Like, I mean, it was on TGIF in the late 80s.
This will be a weekend your mother will never forget.
But maybe they just hoped like the kids wouldn't understand it, and the adults would just like be like,
but
whoa.
this show does that. It occasionally dips into the dark
occasionally.
side. So I think,
Yeah.
largely it would hold up. Aside from those couple of lines that
A
maybe
couple
you
of things,
update.
but like a similar story could be done today with a few tweaks. That's the conclusion.
But like, could you have them build a bomb? I don't know. Would that work? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, why not? A chemistry set? It's just a chemistry set.
Yeah. It's harmless. Do they even give those kids chemistry sets these days?
I don't know.
that you
We
can
never got. I never had a
explode
chemistry set
things
like that.
with.
with explosive. No, they
Dangerous
definitely wouldn't do that
chemicals?
these days. But these days they would just be like, "Oh, here's the gun I bought at Walmart. Let's just shoot the door open."
Oh, good thing there's a shotgun down here. Maybe.
I'll just shoot the gun open.
Or he would.
the door
He could make some sort of gun because I don't know.
3D printer
There's a
down
3D
there.
printer.
We'll
and they
3D print
printed
the
a gun.
key.
Yeah.
They would just 3D print the key
Yeah.
to like open. Anyway.
Oh my God, Balky! Look, there's a 3D printer here. Plug it in. Use your phone to take a photo of the key and scan it.
The
and we'll
water
print
would
it.
have ruined it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so otherwise, a few tweaks to keep the story modern, but I think the
General
basic premise of it would hold up.
Is still
Some lines that
fun.
we'd prefer to not have, but otherwise it would be good.
That's going to do it for this week. Join us next week when the cousins go golfing. Or golfing. Or how do you...
golfing.
It's all I said that wrong. Golfing. Timing. Yes, golfing and, we'll play a little miniature golf.
That already sounds hilarious.
We'll see how much we can relate to this. In the meantime, you can support this very podcast, listener. If you go to our website, there's a little button on there. It says, buy me a coffee. You can buy us a virtual coffee. It is... like a little tip jar. You can support the show. All of our donations go back into keeping the show coming out every week throughout season after season until we finish the whole run. All tips are appreciated.
And every little thing helps. But in the meantime, if you can't make it to buy us a coffee, you can always visit us at danceofjoypod.com. Please check out our website. On that site, you can find all the links to all the places where you can listen to or subscribe to the podcast, where you can leave us a rating, a review. You can press a little button right there on the website and leave us a voice message. Say hi. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us about your basement disasters and your and tell us if you can explain any of the science and engineering behind this episode and plumbing. Let us know what would happen if the water reached that electric box. How did the water fill so fast, etc. Or just say hi. You can always also send us an email at danceofjoypod@gmail.com. We love to hear from you. We'll shout you out on the show. And also, you could do us a great big favor and right there from our website, visit us on all our social media and give us a like and follow there. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But Imran, what is the most important thing our listeners should do?
When you're building a bomb, make sure you have enough potash around. I don't know. Don't build a bomb.
Always
Don't do
keep
that.
your tie dry.
Yes. No. Here's the thing. If you go to the Home Depot and buy those ingredients, like you're on a list.
You're on a list.
You're on a list somewhere. So you can't even get that stuff these
Well,
days.
you wouldn't buy them all at once.
No, you'd have to go to
would
different
go on separate trips.
Oh God, now
Yeah.
we're in trouble. We just told people how
Oh,
to.
I mean, not
Yes,
that.
make sure to visit different Home Depots so they know there's no trail. And
I
pay
mean,
cash.
we are a
What?
family-friendly podcast about a 80s hit sitcom.
Yeah. And the most important thing is to share this show with your friends and your plumber and anybody else who's
And
had
your
a
dad.
and your
Your
dad.
overly critical dad.
And then your dad will say, "I'm proud of you, child, for
Well
showing
done,
me
son."
this podcast."
That's it for us tonight, and now we are so happy.
Now we are so happy we do the dance of joy.
Hey, 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 hey.